Hello, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. I am Ariel Silver, and I am the program manager over at the SONA Foundation. This is our monthly Fireside Chat, a virtual conversation with songwriters about mental health. And for this program, we always partner with our Backline partner. They are working in mental health for musicians and the music industry, and also the surrounding community, the spouses and the families of musicians and folks in the music industry. This particular episode is inspired by Women's History Month, and we have two fantastic guest songwriters, Kay Hanley and Grace Pettis. And I just want to give a shout out to last month's guests, Brian Kennedy and Jennifer Finch. We had a really robust conversation with them last month about unexpected illness. So if you missed that session, it's up on our website, sonafoundation.com, and you can watch that. We have more programs in the mental health, career development, and financial wellness programs coming soon. So if you're not already on our SONA Foundation mailing list, I will throw the link to that in the chat box and make sure that you have everything you need so that you can find out about the very cool things that we have coming up. Right now, I'm going to bring Terra Lopez, our community manager partner at Backline, onto the screen. Hi, Terra.
Hey, Ariel. How's it going?
Very good. I am so excited about this conversation. Our guests for this session, Kay Hanley and Grace Pettis, they are two phenomenal songwriters, amazing human beings. They are women working in the music industry, and I'm just excited to hear what comes of the conversation. So I'm going to bow out, go behind the scenes, and just let you take the reins. How's that?
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much. I'm Terra Lopez. I'm the community manager and head of artist partnerships at Backline, for those who don't know me. Like Ariel mentioned, we have a very special fireside chat with the SONA Foundation today in celebration of Women's History Month. As most of you might know, Backline is a resource hub for the music industry, and we aim to provide the industry with as many tools and resources as possible to support mental health and wellness. And today, yes, we have some incredible guests. We have Grace Pettis, who is a singer-songwriter whose blend of folk, Americana, and soul has garnered praise everywhere, from NPR, Outfront Magazine, American Songwriter. She just got back from South by Southwest. Her acclaimed debut album on M-Press featured an all-female non-binary band and included the Legends Indigo Girls, Ruthie Foster, Dar Williams, and more. We also have Kay Hanley, an award-winning songwriter and co-founder of the Songwriters of North America. And you might also know Kay for her legendary band, Letters to Cleo. And we have Nyeesha Williams, who is a mental well-being expert, humanitarian, life coach, amongst many other things. She has worked in healthcare for over 20 years, specializing in trauma survivors and women's health. And as a mental health expert, she helps others cope with anxiety, depression, creative block, and artist stagnation through her deep understanding of mental health. And I'm so excited to have Nyeesha here to lend some expertise and to let us know what we can do if we're feeling creative blocks, if we're feeling uninspired. So really excited for this conversation today. Hello, Nyeesha, Grace, and Kay. Thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited for this conversation. One, happy Women's History Month. Yes. First off, I just want to ask how everyone's feeling today.
I'm feeling a little tired, but great.
Feel you? I'm on my second cup of coffee.
I'm feeling pretty content and relaxed and happy to be here.
Awesome.
I'm feeling good. I'm also on cup number 2, and it's been a little bit of a hectic morning. I'm releasing a new record, so there's a lot of juggling happening behind the scenes right now. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty zen. So
awesome. Well, let's just jump right in. We got a lot of questions from individuals who are really excited about this conversation. So let's start off with one of those from one of the Backline community members. They'd like to know if you can share, Kay and Grace, some of the unique challenges that you face as a woman in the music industry?
Oh man, I feel like I probably have so much to learn from Kay. So I was like waiting for her answer for these when I was looking through these questions. Um, I mean, there's so much I guess that we're all familiar with, just like the tiny things from when you're driving back from a gig and it's, 1 in the morning and you have to pee and all the gas stations are either closed or really sketchy, things like that. If you're walking to your car and you're wearing a mini skirt and you're carrying really expensive gear and a wad full of cash, you know, going into that little back room after the gig, after everybody's left, and doing that mental calculation of like, am I safe talking to this promoter by myself in this little closed room, in my mini skirt, So there's that kind of like just sort of basic stuff. Always trying to find a hotel with like good lighting and where you can park and see your stuff when you stop for food. And then there's just like, the way that people interact with you in the professional space, just from encounters with like salespeople at music stores to, sound people behind the board to getting paid. Just walking into that space with enough kind of confidence and wherewithal, and then still kind of coming up against stuff like that. Like I have friends who have like degrees in sound engineering and still get into battles about frequencies and stuff. So where there's just sort of a baseline of like you probably don't know what you're doing is the assumption. Even after you've been doing it 15 years and playing 100 shows a year, they still want to tell you like how to use your microphone, things like that. That's the main stuff. And then there's just sort of like lack of representation across the board in every job that there is in the music industry. I mean, you could start with producers, less than 2% are women, with an X, because I'm including non-binary. And then on down to, the actual infrastructure of like festivals, management rosters, booking agencies, labels, like what percentage of those artists. And then when you add this sort of like intersectional factors of like ability, race, age, weight, whether or not you have children, whether or not you want to have time for a personal life and a family, all of those challenges just get more and more impossible. And I feel like I want to use the word impossible because I think there's this like idea that like if we're struggling with this stuff, then we need to learn more tools and we're just like not doing it well. And like actually the job is impossible. And I think it's okay to say that. But we can still somehow, create a community that supports each other and does the work. But it's also like important to say that like it is stacked against you. And if you feel that way, like you're not crazy. So don't gaslight yourself and just be like, why am I not successful? There are a lot of challenges.
So many great points that you bring up, and so many subtle, elements that I feel as women or non-binary folks have to face while on tour. I like just you saying that, I've had many shows where I've played and had to really advocate for myself. Like I know my gear, I know what I'm using, I know how to use it. Simple thing, I mean, not simple, but things that do really stack up on a tour, on a day-to-day. Kay, does any of what Grace said resonate with you and what you've experienced?
Mute. I'm unmuting. Okay. Yeah, Grace, great points. And so like a different tip from where I was going. So I'm glad you covered all of that. One thing you talked about was the sort of engineering and production space. I've been noticing in live rock clubs over the last maybe 5 years or so, not a lot, comparatively speaking, I've met a lot more female monitor engineers and front of house sound engineers, and that has been, you just never ever saw that in the 90s. I feel like there's like such a distortion field around my experience as a woman in music because I well, first of all, being an Irish Catholic girl from, you know, the 70s and 80s, from Boston, I was brought up to believe that like I really had no business being creative, that this was just like a ridiculous thing to try and do. You know, I was trained by the nuns to be a secretary. So like, not that there's anything wrong with being an administrative assistant. I just don't have the organization for it. I applaud women and men who can go into those fields. For me, it was also when my band sort of Letters to Cleo was having success. It was at this like magical 5 minutes in rock and roll radio where women were getting played. We were headlining the festivals. We were getting added to the playlists. At the same time, there was, I remember this so vividly. I can't believe that we accepted this. But when your record was coming out, it was the charts or the radio format that we were part of was called alternative. Was it all? I guess just like alt rock or something like that. And so when your record, as like if it was me or Belly or Veruca Salt or Luscious Jackson, whoever it was, if you were going for ads that week, meaning if your label was like trying to get your single added to a radio station in any of the markets, if they already had a female in the playlist, they'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, we already have a female in the top 20, you know, and only 20 records would get added per week. So if you just happened to release your record in the same week that another woman's record was anywhere in the top 20, you couldn't get added, even though we were. And it's so, when I think about this, my heart pounds, because I remember saying things like, oh, we couldn't get added to, you know, blah, blah, blah in Houston because they already had Jennifer Tynan on their playlist for the week. So we couldn't get added. Like, we just accepted this as like part of the thing. And yet we were still kicking ass. I mean, we got nookied in the late 90s and we all got kicked out of the club. But before that, it was pretty cool time for girls in rock and roll.
You saying that makes me remember that I was talking to a record label, was about to sign them. We'd been talking to them for months. And then out of nowhere, I got a call from the record label and said, you know what? We already, we have 2 female artists on our roster of 100 artists, and we can't add another one. And that was a real conversation that I had. And I was like, hold on. So you mean out of 100 artists on your roster, you can't have 3? And that was just a few years ago. So, Nyeesha, I want to bring you into the conversation. You work with artists and you have for decades. What are some of the obstacles that you hear from women that come to you? You know, does this resonate at all? Is this kind of, you know, a familiar theme for you as well?
Well, it's very familiar. I believe Grace and Kay touched on all of the struggles and obstacles that women face in this particular industry. For me, the top 2 is always anxiety and depression, right? How do I navigate this industry and process my own emotions? There's a lack of being seen, heard, and understood. And how do I take that, learn from it, and not take it personally, right? So those are the 2 things. But then Grace also touched on something. There's a battle between being a creative and wanting a personal life, right? I may want children. I may want to take a break. I am dealing with hormones. I have all of these things that's going on. And if I advocate for myself, I may be demeaned as something that I'm not, right? And then that may interfere with my career in the music industry. So people that come to me, or women that come to me, they are dealing with anxiety, depression, not feeling seen, heard, and understood. But then we have those creative blocks. If you are enduring all of this, whether it's the issues with policy, right? Whether there's an issue in pay, whether it's battling with having autonomy over your body, whether it's being mistreated, right? How am I supposed to process all of these emotions and then show up creatively for the world? And that's what I work with a lot when it comes to women, how to process that, how to work through it, how to practice self-compassion, and then create the utmost authentic way that you can, so you can go ahead and not only help yourself, but help the world.
I feel so seen by you. And I'm sure Grace and Kay probably feel the same way, and others in the chat probably feel the same way, because I personally, as a creative person and as a woman, never really thought about that, because I think in the industry, you're just supposed to go, go, go. And, there really isn't a lot of time for self-reflection. But yeah, we carry a lot. How are we supposed to juggle all of what we carry while also then creating authentic, meaningful music? Yeah, thank you so much for that. That was, I needed to hear that. I want to know, Kay and Grace, have you all ever felt pressure to conform to certain standards, whether it be beauty or certain behaviors within the industry? Have you ever had to come up against that?
I could talk about this for the entire rest of the panel, but I'll try and keep it brief. Yes, the memory that springs instantly to mind is our biggest hit was the song called Here and Now, and it played on at the end of the credits for Mel's Place. And back then, like you didn't have like a stylist or anything like that. So I literally rolled out of bed, threw my hair in messy, dirty pigtails, did my own makeup, wore my own clothes, and like rolled up to the video shoot and just like did it. But the pigtails became kind of like a thing. And I remember going to South by Southwest, where Grace just was, but in 1995. And somebody at the laundromat, I was doing my laundry at the laundromat at South by, and someone said, "Aren't you that girl from the video?" And I was like so freaked out that I had been recognized that the next day I went and like dyed my hair like fine orange and red, and like so that I could resume my I did not like the way that felt, which is weird as a lead singer. I know to say this now does not make any sense, but I didn't like being recognized. So when we were going to put out our second single, and I showed up at our record label with this fire engine red hair, they were like, "What? Where's the blonde hair? Where's the details?" And I was like it had never occurred to me that the label cared at all about marketing me and how I looked. And that was pretty much when I started just like moonwalking away from being a singer in a rock band. I mean, I ended up making two more records with that. It actually overall, comparatively speaking, was I didn't get the men that worked at the label were very respectful, and I met some women at the label that I'm still friends with to this day. I had a pretty good experience, except for like I said, comparatively. But the thing about marketing me by how and like this demand that I like look the same or look a certain way or dress this way, or it really just went against everything you know, the behavior thing, you know, sort of, if I was you know, I have like a lot of self-destructive impulses. I spent a lot of years very much enjoying my substances, and I love to like, nothing I love more than like jumping off stage and starting a bar fight, you know. But I was like rewarded for these. I was rewarded for these behaviors, and because of you know, me getting good attention for the stuff about me that maybe wasn't so healthy. You know, I paid a pretty big price for that down the road, and which we talked about on another episode of Backline when we discussed addiction and recovery. But yeah, so.
Grace, what about you? Have you ever felt like you've had to meet certain standards or behaviors?
Standards or behaviors. Yeah, I mean, well, I should start by saying that I'm extremely fortunate in my team. Like the people that I work with, I've chosen very carefully. I waited a long time before signing with anybody. And when I did, it was Empress Records. They're a small boutique label. They were founded by a woman, Rachel Sage, back in the whole Lilith Fair, you know, moment. She was just like, fuck it, and started her own label. And they've been doing it ever since. And they're incredibly supportive. So, but we do talk about a lot of this stuff a lot, you know, because just because we're aware of it doesn't mean we're not like swimming in it. Like, for example, did you know that the most clicked on image on the internet is a woman's face?
Mm.
So just like bearing that in mind when you're thinking about things like what should the record cover be, you know, it's really difficult psychologically to think of yourself as both a human and a product. And I think it takes a lot of like good boundaries and just kind of presence of mind to parse that out. I really enjoy performance. I really enjoy makeup. I love, like, I'm pretty femme when I want to be. Like, I love drag. Like, I'm just full fake eyelashes. My boyfriend calls it like princess girlfriend look, you know? And I love being princess girlfriend. Like, it's really fun. And I have fun with it. And some days I put it on and it feels like war paint. And it feels like I get to kind of magnify this side of myself and be an artist through that. Other days it feels like an obligation because I know, like I had this conversation in January. I was at this writing retreat in Texas with a bunch of women writers that I really respect, and we were talking. I was like, have you guys ever noticed that, like in the folk music space, which is the space that I'm in, which is like pretty friendly space, and it's like a big cuddly hug of a genre, you know, and it's not rock and roll like we, you know, it's like patchouli and tie-dye and hugs, you know. But like when we talk about like women and men, even in that space, like if you think about who do you think of as a great Americana folk songwriter who's a woman, you might think of like, I don't know, Joni Mitchell, or you might think of, you know, Emmylou Harris, or you might think of some of these people, and they have to be, or Nancy Griffith or something, they have to be amazing songwriters. They have to be as good songwriters as James Taylor or Bruce Springsteen or Willie Nelson. But they also, like the optics of how they look is also a big factor. And they have to sing like birds. Like there's this, you know, there's this standard, like if you're a dude, you can just kind of be a guy who writes really good songs. It's not to say that like Springsteen or Dylan or whoever, like that they're not good singers or that they're not attractive. I'm just saying like the optics of how they look or how they and the quality of their voice are not the, like it's enough to just be a writer. You know, if James Taylor didn't have a good voice, he'd still have a career because he can write Fire and Rain. But like as a woman, you also have to like look a certain way. You have to sound a certain way. There's like still, you know, a bias toward being thin, being white, being, you know, all these things, being young. And that isn't to say that there are artists that like escape those, you know, conditions and still manage to find success, but they're the outliers, you know, and we know that they're the outliers. So I think that those problems are still really prevalent. I'll give you another example. Like, I'm a really visual person, and during the pandemic, I got a certificate in graphic design. And the professor has worked for a lot of labels and stuff. And what he taught us is like, okay, well, here's the standard for Photoshop for a woman's face for photos. And here's the standard, here's the industry standard for what we do for men's faces. And they are different. Like, they're objectively different. Like, the amount of pore reduction, dark circle removal, face thinning, like these kind of things. Like, the standard, what you think of as a woman's face has been sold to you by magazines, you know, for many decades now. And what we think of as a man, it's okay for a man to be rugged. You know, if George Clooney has wrinkles and pores, he's just like rugged. But like, if a woman has wrinkles and pores, then she's used goods and she's not marketable. So it's just like, that kind of stuff still really pisses me off. And even if you're like aware of it, I don't know, I guess Dolly's my hero in that. I feel like she's very aware of everything and somehow plays the game anyway and plays it on her terms. And that's kind of my model. That's what I want to do. And she kind of laughs at it too. She's really good about not being the joke, but being the joke teller, you know? So I kind of want to aspire to that. I think that that's a really good mental health example that we can all sort of aspire to. Yeah.
You bring up a lot of really good points. When I signed to a major label a few years ago, and in one of our initial meetings, an executive asked my age, and I said 30. And he was like, you know that there's a shelf life for women, right? And he said this in front of a ton of executives. And I was flabbergasted. Like, what are you supposed to say to that? And I walked out of the meeting, but I was just, I mean, it's so brazen, and it's not a secret. It's not an industry secret. It's very much out there. Nyeesha, with everything that like Kay and Grace has said, and, you know, all of these expectations, all of these double standards, like Grace was mentioning, all the things that we have to carry as artists, as women, what can we do to at least, you know, promote our well-being in our day-to-day when having to go to these meetings and hearing this type of feedback? You were saying that a lot of women deal with anxiety and depression, specifically within this industry. What are some like tangible tools, you know, that we can utilize, whether it's right before we step into a meeting or right before we, you know, have this hard conversation?
Well, let me just say I want to give Grace a hug, because there were so many things that you brought up that I just wanted to just give you a nice little shake and a nice little hug. But Terra, even in that, there are so many things we can touch on, right? You did bring up carrying. And that's one of the biggest talks that I have. As women, we are natural nurturers, right? We want to provide, we want to help, we want to show up, we want to support. Even when we are going through our own mess, we still find time and energy to show up for other people. And the truth of the matter is, we have to learn how to put that down. If it's not ours, if it does not serve us, if it is not feeding our soul on a most positive level, we have to let that go. That is one, right? We have to learn that everyone else's baggage is not our baggage. So we are having to learn how to carry our own mess and the mess of everyone else. That doesn't belong to us. We have to let that go. So that's one, I would say, right? Two, I have these non-negotiable hours. I feel like as women, we should have 2 hour minimum to ourselves every single day. How you tend to break it up, you know, some people are, they're experienced, or they have been diagnosed with ADHD or anything of that sort. So you might want to break it down like 30 minutes, 15 minutes, but the 2 hours a day, that is for you to tap back into yourself. Practice how you can love on you. practice and learn your attachment and detachment styles, right? Who are you when you are not an artist? Who are you when you are not sitting down with execs? Who are you when you are not on stage? Whoever that person is, that's who you love on. That's who you hug. So if it's pampering yourself, if it's exercising, if it's choosing how you feed yourself with food, that's what I want us to do as women in this industry, because those times that you're spending with yourself, whether it's 15-minute, 30-minute, or 2-hour straight breaks, it allows you to release these endorphins, right? It allows you to say, wait a minute, there's something else that I could have said in that meeting. Wait a minute, this doesn't feel right with my soul. I need to go and reevaluate how I can go back into this meeting or go back into signing this contract and do it better. Do it in a way that feeds me so I can continue to show up for myself. So I would say, one, put down the mess, right? The baggage that's not yours, place it in the garbage, because it's going to keep surfacing up and we're going to continue to smell it. So let that go. And two, find time or carve out time for yourself to give to yourself, right? So those would be my answers.
Love it, Ariel. Please put those tips in the chat for everyone. Let that go, and non-negotiable hours, 2 hours at least a day. I love those tips. Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you so much. Also, I can feel your energy through the screen, and I'm just feeling very, very pumped up. So thank you so much, Nyeesha. Speaking of those, those hours, the hours that we need, Kay and Grace, how do you two find time to balance navigating the industry and all of those stressors, and also focusing on your mental health and your self-care, well-being in your day-to-day?
Oh, this is such a great conversation, you guys. I'm loving it. How do I find the time? I'm just finally figuring that out. I'm 55, and I've had a long career in the music business, and I'm grateful, but I've also worked really, really hard and to hone my craft, and I'm just only in this decade, I feel like I'm at the height of my powers, because I'm doing the work. I'm finally doing the work that I want to be doing, and I'm not carrying other people's mess. My kids are out of the house and they're off and doing their lives, and I discovered that I love to exercise. I love anything where I have to put my phone down, and I love anything where I choose to put my phone down, just to kind of to bump off what Nyeesha was talking about. I love being unreachable. When people get on an airplane and get the Wi-Fi on the plane, I'm blown away. It's this is your when you're flying to Boston or New York or whatever, this is your 6 hours to be unreachable. How do you not take that? It's you never get, when someone is when you say, sorry, I didn't return your email yesterday, I was in the air all day. It's people understand that. Why are you returning emails on an airplane? Oh, don't get me started. But I really, really take advantage of any time that I have to not be reachable. You don't need to be accessible all the time. When people Slack me, I'm don't Slack me for something you could email me for. I'm not reachable. It can wait. If it's important, it's not urgent.
Love it. Set those boundaries. And like Nyeesha said, don't carry other baggage. Grace, what do you do in your day-to-day to kind of take care of yourself?
I love everything that you guys are saying. All of this is just really helpful. I wrote down like a little list for myself. I have real bad ADHD, and so I do a lot of lists. So yeah, so just sort of some practical things that like I've learned to help with my own. One thing is therapy. I really believe in therapy. I've been in therapy for the past like year and a half, and I started during my separation and divorce, and I don't think I would have gotten through that. Um, my separation started in the midst of 2 album releases with my own work and like with a band, and that has been a lifeline. And I know it's expensive, and I know it's a privilege, but if there's any way that you can get the resources to get that kind of help, you should. There's organizations like Music Cares in Nashville. If you live in Austin, there's an organization called Sims, which is really great. There's also Ham, and there's some other stuff like that. So if you can find that kind of help, I think that's very important. I said this one already, but don't beat yourself up. Like everybody else and the world is already going to beat you up, so like don't add to that. It is impossible. Don't gaslight yourself and don't be like, I'm doing such a terrible job. Like it's a really hard job. Some days you're going to do great. Other days you're going to mess everything up or like not do anything on your list, and that's okay. You can still get up the next day and start over again. I make my bed every day. I feel like that's like a really important, that's like changed my life. I told my friend Shannon address this, and she started doing it, and it was like life changing for her too. I don't know why, but it just, something about that psychologically just gives me the illusion of control and like a canvas that's clean every morning. Another big thing is ask for help. Ask for help from your friends. Ask for help for your mental health. Ask for help for your music work. I think the industry is trying to teach us to be scarcity minded and to compete with each other. Like if you're coming of age as a professional in an industry that's going, we only have room for 3 women in this hour of music or on this roster, like that is trying to convince you to compete. So like I have to compete with all these other people in this space because there's only one opportunity and it's got to be for me, and there's not enough to go around. It's like scarcity. And somewhere around 2017, I accidentally started a band with 2 good friends, Betty Sue and Rebecca Loby. And then we accidentally got a record deal, and it was like amazing. And the thing that I learned was, and we'd all been friends for like 10 years, but like our ability to like actually get further and do better and support each other was just so much greater when we looked out for each other. And I think that just like community building, I think somewhere in my mid-20s, I like figured this out, that like building community with other people in this space is, sometimes there's not going to be a seat at the table and you have to make your own table. Like that happens, and if we can all kind of support, one of us is going to get through. It might not be me, but it might be one of my friends. And if we can all kind of support each other, then we can create a better industry and community for everybody. And you can do that at whatever level you're at. You don't have to be like successful to be a change maker. So I think that's a really important thing. I think those are the main things I had. I don't know. Some days I do really well. Other days I do really badly. I struggle with anxiety. I've had depression. Like I take meds, and I think we should not stigmatize that stuff. It's hard. It's hard to be a human. Let alone a human that's trying to also figure out how to make art in like a world that's on fire and where all this terrible shit is happening every day. Like how are we even all still here after the past 6 years? I don't know. Like it's miraculous that we're alive at all.
Honestly, yes, 100% agree with everything you're saying. I also take medication, and I do believe that it should be destigmatized, because that's a whole other conversation to have, though, but very, very real, and has been a literal lifesaver for me. 2 things that you said, or at least 2 things that I do in the morning that I've started doing since January, is making my bed, which is huge. It's a very, very small task that truly makes me also feel like, okay, I can control this, and I'm doing this, and I'm going to be consistent, and I'm going to show up and do this every day if that's the only thing I do. And also, I refuse to use my phone for the first hour that I'm awake. I don't even look at it. And that has changed everything for me. It's just shutting off and taking that hour, like Nyeesha said, take, the first hour just truly to myself has worked wonders. I know that we only have a little bit of time left, so I want to get to some additional questions. Let's talk creative blocks. A lot of folks wanted to know what the two of you do. And then Nyeesha, I want to talk to you because you specifically work with folks to get through creative blocks and artist stagnation. Kay and Grace, when you do hit those blocks, what do you do to, work through it and kind of, talk yourself through that experience? Or do you just sit in it and let it be?
Well, part of being an artist is learning how to be okay with an uncomfortable feeling. Like when you're blocked, go out and live your life. Go have a beautiful meal. Go walk in a forest. Go, I don't want to say have a fight with your partner, but like things that real life. There's no better gift that you can give your art than living a big, rich life, having experiences to write about. I wanted to say one thing, respond to one thing Grace said, which is about therapy. The SONA Foundation is launching the Therapy Access Project with a big assist from Backline, and we will be paying for songwriters who apply to either find a therapist or to pay for your therapist or both. So stay tuned for that. And I have terrible ADHD, and because I went off I veered off onto that path. I can't find my way back to the path I was on. What were we talking about?
Creative blocks. You were saying something that I really loved, which is just go live your life, which is so huge because as a creative myself, it took me way too long to learn to not beat myself up, to not just keep trying to grind and try on this idea. Instead, walk away and live.
I feel like it's sort of like fighting, or when you have a block, it's sort of like being in a riptide. You can either like fight your way out of it and make it happen, and just like and you're just gonna get crushed, or you can just like do the thing that feels the scariest, which is like just give in to the current, and it will bring you back to shore. But that is so difficult because we all, just like you said, we want to grind. It's like if I'm not creating, there's something wrong with me. We don't have a 9 to 5 that tells us when to punch in and punch out. So we have to. It's imperative that we understand how our creative minds work. The other thing that I did to combat, I found that, early on, like I realized that there were a lot of things working against me being a certain kind of songwriter. My ego was a big part of that. And I knew early on that like I wanted to move behind the scenes. For me, if I have I write music in TV animation now. That's pretty much all I do, except for a couple of times a year I write songs with letters to Cleo, and it's really a fun kind of detour, and I have a lot of like juicy shit to write about now. But if I have a script in front of me that tells me like the song goes here, if these characters are singing it, it has to bring the story from point A to point B. It's like that is like the magic sauce for me because it extricates my ego. It's just not about me anymore. I'm making shit up, like literally making shit up. And that is where my creativity is the most fearless. And fear is the enemy of art.
Truly, truly is. Grace, what do you do?
I find all that so interesting because there's so much that I resonate with, and there's also so much that's like really different for me. I agree that like fear is the great enemy of art. Absolutely. Like whatever it is that you're afraid of writing, that's the thing you should write about. Like that's where it is. It's right there. It's like right on the other side of like your comfort zone. And at least for me. But like and I have so much respect for the kind of 9-to-5 writers here in Nashville who like go into offices and get a prompt and like write. Like my friend Zach, like he just like gets these prompts and he goes in and he writes stuff for like TV or for whatever, like to pitch to stuff, or who can go into a co-write and write for another artist or do those things. And I love co-writing and I can do that stuff, but it doesn't really light me up. Like, and I actually had to decide kind of early on, and this is again like this conversation about boundaries. Like, you can't be all things to all people. You have to kind of decide where to put your energy. It's never going to be enough. It's not going to make everybody happy. But for me, if I don't start with like, you know, that whole thing of like pay yourself first, like I think about that emotionally and like creatively, like pay yourself first creatively, because like if I'm not having fun like writing, then I'm not going to write. I'm going to go work at a bank, you know? Like if it's, I'm going to do something else where I have like dental, you know? It's like if I applied myself even a little bit to literally any other field, I'd be so rich by now. But I really love writing songs, and I love writing songs for just the sake of writing a really good song. And there's so much of my ego in it. My ego is like so in that. It's because it's like I'm always challenging myself. Like I want to be better than my last song, and I want to write 100 more that are better than that. And like I don't know, but that's just what like really fuels me, you know? So I think it is like, I mean, I get how like having the structure and being like, okay, write to this prompt in this way, like that can be really good for an ADD brain. And if that like keeps you on the rails, but just whatever it is that keeps you writing, that's the thing that you should do. If being really angry and like being an activist and like wanting to change, if that's like your fuel, or if it's like all about the audience and you love performance and you love to like connect and have that conversation, that's your fuel. Maybe it's craftsmanship. Maybe you're like this incredible instrumentalist and you just like want to, you know, make the craft better. Like whatever your compass is that just keeps you doing it, follow that. And for me, I think it started when I was a little kid with trying to explain myself because I felt very misunderstood and I wanted people to understand me and I wanted to understand myself. So it's about meaning making and storytelling for me, and just doing that to the best of my ability. But yeah, I guess that would be my advice. I mean, yeah, and you're gonna have blocks. You're gonna have time where you don't want to write, and that's okay. That's all part of writing. That's like, maybe don't think about that as like writing and not writing, but just think about all of that as part of the creative process. Like maybe today you need to take a 2-hour walk and like buy a burrito, and maybe that's part of the song that you're going to write in 2 months, you know, because something on that walk. Just stay curious about the world, stay engaged and stay interested and happy and joyful, and like, you know, be awake and alive, and like that will turn into art.
I love all these points that y'all are making. Also, always advocating to go on a walk and eat a burrito. Nyeesha, what are some tips that you you know, tell your clients if they're beating themselves up for just not being able to create in the moment, or if they're feeling stagnant?
So first of all, I want a burrito. Let me just say that. I'll share what I do when it comes to my clients. And Kay and Grace kind of brought up some of the things that I do touch on. Mine is threefold, right? So I really focus on inner child healing. So when we are frustrated, right, when something is not coming through creatively, I like to work with my clients. What does that say? What does that remind you of, right? When was the first time you heard that you wasn't creative? What does that, you know, so what is the voice you're hearing? That first voice that you heard, we need to talk to that little girl or that little boy who heard that voice for the first time, right? Let's tap into how he's feeling or how she's feeling so we can work with her so she knows that it's not her fault, right? Not being creative in this moment is okay. We go back to the self-compassion and grace, right? So that's one. Inner child healing is really, really, really important. And then two, like Kay brought up, go and live, right? Go live, go walk, go live and eat your burrito. So after we're working on the inner child healing and we're processing that, because we have to remember, also I want to say, we can be 35, 45, 55. We are still navigating life at the age that the trauma was introduced. So we can be 55 years old and a 12-year-old girl because we haven't healed that 12-year-old version of ourselves. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So inner child healing is important. That's one. Two, when we're walking and we're eating a burrito, I like to purchase a plant for my clients. And that plant is going to be named after you. So when it's time for you to nurture that plant, water that plant, fertilize that plant, feed that plant, you are speaking to yourself subconsciously. So when you're entering into that world where the plant is, if you're not giving the plant sun and you see the plant dwindle, you are reminded that you are not providing for yourself. So that's part two. In closing, what I like to do is, we talked about the inner child healing, the little girl, right? And now we are navigating as an adult. But what about when they meet? Your responsibility now is to hold her, is to nurture her, is to make sure that whatever makes her happy is what she's doing. So if you can't write in this moment, what does she want to do? Does she want to play with dolls? Does she want to go climb a gate? Does she want to go play games? Go do that. And then your inspiration is going to come. So what was once blocked will be unblocked and you can tap back into your writing.
I am so excited for these tips. I love the inner child healing. That is so powerful what you were saying. You can be 55, but if that 12-year-old girl has not been healed, she's going to be right there along with you. That is so powerful. Also, the plant, I love that that's a tangible way to actually reflect. Like, am I taking care of myself? Am I nourishing myself? And I just love go live. I immediately thought like, gosh, what does 12-year-old me actually need right now?
Right.
Seriously, I am like, thank you. Also, I want to let folks know in the chat that Nyeesha is a part of the Backline Clinical Network. So if what she is saying is resonating with you, go to backline.care, go submit through our clinical management submission form, and you can go see Nyeesha and get that inner child healed. That seriously, thank you. I can't think. I'm loving this conversation. I know we only have a couple of more minutes. So let's kind of end it on a joyful note. I want to know from all three of you, what brings you joy in your day-to-day? Kay, let's start with you.
I have the same thing for lunch almost every day. And my dog, my little mini Aussie Shepherd, comes and and sometimes my cat just comes and waits while I'm preparing my food. And then I give them both a little treat. And we do the same thing every day, and it never fails to just delight the heck out of me.
Oh, I love that. Honestly, I feel like animals are such a, and I didn't know this until I had dogs and a cat myself, how much joy they bring you and how much they pull you out of your own head and force you to live in the moment and just change your perspective instantly.
To just give maximum love and service to my adorable animals.
Grace, what brings you joy?
I mean, I all the things music and my family. I love to go for a walk. I have a really great boyfriend. We make up puns in the morning. This is our thing. I really love doing that. I love Star Trek. I spend a lot of time watching Star Trek. That is my main and kind of only hobby. Also, just Instagram. I love just being on Instagram looking at raccoon memes. That brings me a lot of joy. I also read. I'm not but I like Instagram too. And I don't know. all those things.
I love it. I love that a raccoon meme is right up there. That's amazing. And Nyeesha, what brings you joy?
Ooh, firstly, I would have to say my family, my husband and my children. They bring me joy. And I'm including my cat because that is my child. That's my fur baby, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want him to hear me say anything about him. Reading is a big thing. I cannot push women who run with the wolves enough. I mean, that is like a Bible for women. That's how I feel. I love reading. And lastly, I love scrolling through Instagram to get recipes. I am huge on like smoothies and what to bake. So those are my 3 things that bring me joy.
I love that both Nyeesha and Grace said Instagram, because for me, social media can be such a source of anxiety, but y'all are making me look at it in a different way and be like, okay, maybe I can find a funny meme, or maybe that recipe, like, I don't know, just flip the script and perspective on social media as an artist. Or go ahead.
Terra, I felt the same way, right? I found myself wanting to run from social media because I felt like it was just so heavy and there's always bad news. And that is true. But what I had to be reminded of was how I set boundaries in my real life is just how I can set boundaries on social media. So if what you're posting doesn't resonate with me and it doesn't make me feel yummy inside, I can delete you. I can block you. What does make me happy? What does inspire me? That's what I'm going to follow. So now the algorithm lets me see what I want or what I want to become or what I'm inspired to do. So it's less of the heaviness and more of feeling like I'm in flow. So that's my suggestion. Maybe just carve out, right?
Set those boundaries, y'all. That's what I'm hearing from this whole conversation. Before we let y'all go, I want to go back to what Nyeesha said, the 2 takeaways, which is let other people's baggage go. We don't have time to hold other people's baggage. And carve out that space, those 2 hours a day. That is just for you. That's going to be such a life changer. I can't wait to start incorporating those 2 things. I'm so ready to let everything else go. I want to thank Nyeesha and Kay and Grace. This conversation has truly filled my soul. I hope that it's also felt that same way for y'all. And also the chat is just going off. I love it. This has truly been such a pleasure sharing this space with you all. So thank you so much.
Hey, Terra.
Hey, I can't say enough incredible things about our guest. The conversation was just, I personally needed it and didn't even know I needed it. So
holy smokes, I'm right there with you. I totally agree. I just starred so many things. Nyeesha said carrying our mess and everyone else's mess. We've got to learn to let that go. I mean, just needed that reminder. Really loved that it just came today and I wasn't, I was like, oh yeah, that's right.
Who can't relate to that, right? I mean, I feel like we all really needed to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Grace, she said, sometimes there's not going to be a seat at the table and you have to make your table. And, I love that attitude. I love that metaphor. And it just, verbalized, for me, some of the stuff that I realized that I've been trying to do in my own, in my own musical community or my own musical life. It was a really great reminder. And it just gave me this picture in my mind of these tables, right?
Oh, I love that Grace mentioned building community. It is so, so important. And also bringing in the scarcity mindset, which is so true. As women in this industry, we are really taught to be pinned against one another. So you have to build your own community and safe spaces.
Absolutely. Oh, and I mean, along those same lines, Kay talking about the 90s and, there's a spot for one woman in the top 20. And, that is still going on in different sectors of the industry and such a great reminder, just to see it illustrated that way. Oh, yes, that that was a thing and that still is a thing. Maybe in maybe there's room for more in the top 20, but it's still happening on radio, for example, country radio, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can't say enough, like just how incredible this conversation was. Someone asked, what was the book Nyeesha suggested? And thank you, Juliet, for answering. And also thank you to everyone in the chat. This has been so awesome to see folks engaged, asking questions, and also just kind of feeling, solidarity with all of the, the things we have to carry and go through. Also, thank you for liking the Bjork poster. She's a badass woman.
100%. And Terra, I just want to say also huge shout out, of course, to bringing in Nyeesha, who was wonderful. She just brought so much. This was our first session fireside chat with her. And thank you so much for bringing her into our world. And our guests, of course, Kay Hanley and Grace Pettis. But Terra, also you. So great facilitating these conversations, participating in them. Thank you so much for being our backline partner in this fireside chat event. Every month, I look forward to these conversations. It's a highlight of my time.
Oh, truly can't thank you all enough at the SONA Foundation for all that you do. We're so excited to host these conversations with you and can't wait for next month.
Ditto. All right, Terra, I will see you then. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
I feel like I am leaving this conversation still thinking about my own answer to that question, what brings you joy? And I loved all of the answers in the chat box because it's true that we're all moving through our daily lives with some challenges, struggles, sadnesses, griefs, anxieties, etc. But those moments of joy, whether it's from the dog and the cat or going for a walk or gardening or reading or finding those wonderful things on Instagram, whatever it is, I've got to remember those things. And I think we all do. Maybe just start a list of what brings us joy. Thank you all so much for participating in the chat, for being here. If you are watching this on replay, fantastic. And for those of you who are watching live, you can find the replays of our previous conversations with Backline over at our YouTube channel, SONA Foundation on YouTube. And please subscribe to the mailing list. You can find that right on our website, sonafoundation.com. We have programs that are about to be launched, including the Therapy Access Project. So do stay tuned for that. That is a grant to help songwriters access therapy if they need that. Also, we have links on our website to Backline, as well as some other mental health resources. And we have programs in financial wellness and career development. So this is the SONA Foundation signing off, and we will see you next month for our next virtual fireside chat. Thank you so much.